Hi, my name is Monica Kretschmer, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Universal Women's Network, Women of Inspiration Awards, and this is the Woman of Inspiration podcast, where we speak with women who lead, inspire, and motivate. Today's guest is a woman whose global perspective, strategic influence, and deep expertise are shaping the future of technology and financial innovation. Kristine Anoska is the global account director at Amazon Web Services, where she's accelerated AI-driven transformation for Canada's leading financial institutions across personal banking, wealth management, capital markets, and insurance. She is also the recipient of our 2025 Woman of Inspiration Woman in Tech Award. Today marks a really big moment for Kristine because this is actually the first time she's ever done a podcast interview. And I am actually really honored that we have you and sharing your thought leadership today with us on the Woman of Inspiration podcast. Now, just a few more minutes here before we introduce Kristine. I just want to share a little bit about her background and journey, which spans 5 countries and over 40 visited, from growing up in post-Soviet Latvia to earning a prestigious Queen Elizabeth Diamond Jubilee Scholarship in England, to launching her career at Bloomberg in London, to navigating global markets and high-pressure environments across North America and Russia. Kristine believes that one thing AI will never automate is human relationships, and her career is living proof of that philosophy. This is her moment to step forward publicly as a woman of power, a global thinker, and a leader at the forefront of the generative AI revolution. So, Kristine, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the Woman of Inspiration podcast.
Oh, thank you, Monica. So good to see you again. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. We always have such great conversations with you, so I'm really excited to chat today.
Beautiful. Well, I think we should just like dive right in. And by the way,
Let's do it.
before we do, I just want to say, we met in Toronto when post Dean Davidson event. We had the opportunity to sit down, and I am in awe of your career path. I mean,
Mhm.
you have really achieved so much in leadership in your career path so far. So I'd really love to start there. For you to share with our audience about the extraordinary global career path that you've had that really it's across finance, it's across emerging markets and technology. These are all spaces that are really male dominated. So please walk us through that career path and journey for you, Kristine. How did you get to where you are today?
Well, thank you so much for your kind words, and it's been a wild ride, a very exciting one because both tech and finance seem to be a very high-paced, high-energy, high-stakes industries that touch global economies, right? We cannot get anywhere without technology and finance these days. And inherently, you have to understand global politics, global movement, not only money, but business and people and trends. So it's never boring, but it also requires a high bar for whoever you engage with, right? Because a lot of what I do is career defining moments for my business partners. So it's been a fantastic space to be a part of, and I didn't arrive there um, right out of the gate. My first education is in international tourism management, believe it or not. So, and then I got fascinated by finance and said, why don't I change? And that's how the Diamond Jubilee Scholarship came about, because some of the top students were getting a chance to make that big change, and it was truly life changing. I think we're going to talk about it a bit later, but um, Bloomberg was always a firm that I looked up to, and I have this philosophy about learning from the best whilst you're growing, right? There's no task too small to get involved, and that's how when I started working at Bloomberg, I would pick the biggest, boldest projects in a company that I could hear of, even as a junior data analyst, and I would go and figure out a way how to be useful to these folks, whatever needed to be doing, from data collection to, I don't know, I would water the flowers, as I used to joke, right? So, and that's how I still run the teams today, with a philosophy of no task too small, as you supporting each other, and you're earning that chance to show up, to help people, to deliver, to earn your stripes. And inevitably, it kept leading to bigger and bigger projects as I was growing in a corporate life, and then bigger opportunities. So my male counterparts been some of my biggest teachers, my biggest supporters, and yeah, and some of the biggest challengers. So it's been a fantastic ride.
So, not everybody was born with that leadership. Do you believe that it was like something that was in you, or, was there a certain lesson when you were growing up, like people that surrounded you that you observed, the way that they'd interact or the way that they would lead? So, what do you think inspired your leadership to lead the way that you lead today?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. I think it's a bit of both. You have to have some of the leadership bone, but also I believe it can be trained, just like resiliency and other traits. And I was fortunate to be in a family of people who never gave up. Again, when Soviet Union fell apart, everybody was struggling to find their footing in this new business environment, right? So again, no task too small. We used to grow our own food, and that's how I saw people being resilient and be part of community and learn the value of the relationship. And then as it was getting better and growing, I was kind of influenced by all these folks who were small business owners and did whatever it took to provide for the family. So that was the early days, and I think I kept those big learnings of work hard, support each other, and then grow together. Then everyone's better off.
So when did I mean, was there ever a language barrier for you, or did you always have a very strong English, like was there a barrier in language that you had overcome as well?
Yeah, I in my country we're trilingual. The younger generation is, so it's kind of table stakes. And but when I moved to England, there's accents involved. There's multiple accents, international community, right? And as a perfectionist, for a year I was observing. I was observing people. I was already in the leadership positions at the school, getting involved, although I was a bit too shy to speak. But then once that muscle kicks in, some might say I never stopped since then. But yes, it's just like anything you do in life, right? At the beginning, you're a bit scared, excited, and then it was global financial crisis, so there was no option to not perform, not to get engaged, right? I had to have about three jobs to get myself through university, and one of them was night shifts at fulfillment center in Amazon, and that's how I
Mm.
got excited about large scale operations and sophisticated structures that are run by AI, right? So we can talk about that too. But it was the need and the timing, and there was the failure was never an option. So
So tell me about that. So you started at, a lower tier within Amazon. You observed something. Was that the moment that you thought, yeah, this is a defining moment. This is where I'm meant to be, and that changed your career path at that time?
yes, I now that I come think about it, I it was such a it was physical labor, right? But like anything in life is what you make of it. And I spend that time. I was very grateful for the opportunity to even have this job. And I started observing how does automation work? How do conveyor belts work? Asking questions from shift managers, and not a lot of people were interested in that. But then at the university, I had my favorite class was leadership and organizational behavior. So we did a lot of these business cases and reading McKinsey and seeing, okay, how do you translate that? How do you translate automating something on a large scale use AI and machine learning to streamline things, right? To make more data-driven decisions. So I I made it into a learning experience. And then when the opportunity came around and you cannot ignore cloud computing. And when the time was right and I was choosing between different hyperscalers, there was no question in my mind which one am I going to go work with. So that's I feel there's been a needle threaded, through the story of the early preview of what comes next. But it's been an extremely interesting journey.
And do you think that perspective that you had on the very early, like, I think we have to talk about how, like, that was quite a long time ago. I mean, AI really erupted publicly in the last 2 or 3 years, right? For sure in the last 2 years. But where you were involved was before it was public. I mean, it was really behind closed doors. And so maybe talk a little bit about that journey and your insight of the timing of you getting involved in AI before we even knew about it.
Yeah, I would say capital markets and finance industry is always cutting edge because there's such high competition, because there's live trading, the news are breaking out quickly, right? With social media, with media outlets, people trade on sentiments. Everybody always wants to see what's that next big thing that people invest in, right? Figure out what the institutional customers will be invested in and how you better serve it. So being around that environment and working for Bloomberg, I was fascinated by how electronic trading worked and how people were leveraging that. So I feel like I've always been close to that community that is pretty secretive because everyone's trying to compete and figure out how do you hunt for that hunt for those great investments, right? So I learned about it early, and I think what you're alluding to is the boom of generative AI, right? When ChatGPT exploded, end of 2022, beginning 2023, and again being at Amazon, being working close with the customers, and it's all public information, right? Amazon was doing machine learning years before, even when I was working at the night shifts at the fulfillment center, right? So it's just connecting and building to those, being always close to the top people in the field to know what's coming next. I think that's been largely why my career has unfolded the way it has been.
And would you also say that opportunities, I know that I talk to lots of women about where they are in their career, and there always seems to be some sort of pivotal moment and some sort of moment when they can say, okay, that decision really changed, or that introduction, or saying yes to that opportunity was really what moved the career forward. So, can you maybe talk about any of those pivotal moments in your career where they were coming to you and you just knew that was the decision that was going to set you on your career path to the next level?
Right. Absolutely. I think one of the biggest things is back in London at a tender age of 24, I was invited to be on the emerging markets team and um, traveling to Russia, working with the top banks, the international banks and local banks. I was already at the table with C-level. The people who were responsible for trading investments and represented large banks that you and I would know about, right? And not being scared of not knowing it at all out of the gate was exciting, but also not everybody would have taken that opportunity. And I think being at the table early and seeing at the early stages of my career how big business, how global business works, how people make decisions, what's important to global leaders has definitely shaped my career going forward. And the second biggest move was the move to Canada, I would say. So I had large asset managers, and it was an interesting time because it was right before COVID, about 6 months before. So being in a new country, don't know anyone, but again, delivering value delivering on time and not being scared to lead, that's valuable everywhere around the world. So that was definitely an interesting career path, and the customers that I worked with. And then came Amazon and never looked back. It's I know where I'd rather be. It's very interesting.
You make it sound so easy, Kristine. Like, a 24-year-old sitting at the table, emerging markets with the CEOs around, and you're like, yeah, I got this. Like, where do you get your, so where does that come from, that confidence? Where did you get that confidence to sit at that table with CEOs at such a young age? Did you ever have imposter syndrome, number one? But who else influenced that, or where did that confidence come from, do you think?
Yeah, it wasn't always that easy. Definitely not. And it's important to know what you don't know and be aware of it. And a lot of it was late night research, weekends, right? You can't it, uh, in global financial markets, it's very easy to quickly understand who knows what they're talking about and who doesn't. So I think over indexing on learning from the best, coming back from London, preparing for the next trip, and making sure you show up, asking the right questions, right? Because most of the times people know what they want to do, and you just trying to better understand, work backwards from their business goals. And then once you know where you go, and then you can map out the journey there, right? And then you can reach out for help for people who are ahead of you, right? I've always been good about bringing people, asking for an advice. It's important, right? That you don't just show up and try to pretend. Um, I've never had an imposter syndrome. It's more like a bit excited and scared, but then you get over it quickly as you start stepping into your power and getting to know the field, right? And then
Mhm.
do that on volume, and then it becomes easier and easier. And we talked about it a little bit. My view is being in top global tech from all of my career. If you give in to that imposter syndrome and you linger too much into that headspace, you rob yourself of your full potential because your energies go into to maintaining the appearances, right? And overthinking and all of that. And then you rob your business partners of your full potential because you're focusing on the wrong thing. So I've always said to my team and other people that I mentor, get over it as quick as possible, whatever is that avenue. Work with a coach, work with a mentor, work with a psychologist, whatever tools you need, but get rid of that thing early, so you can show up your full self and work on the right things.
So that's interesting that, I mean, it's not uncommon to have, executive coaches and support network around you because, when you're leading in such high stakes and confidential arenas, there's nobody that you can really talk to about some of the things, how you navigate. So that's where, executive coach is really handy because you can actually talk out your thoughts with somebody that in a confidential arena. But you also said something really interesting where, and I've never thought about it before, but, having your, team of advisors and one being a psychologist, so I've never actually thought, but how brilliant is that?
Thank you. And they under NDA, right? Because it's all,
Yeah.
so they're not going to tell anyone. I think another big topic in my life is not all women are supportive of each other. Unfortunately, right? It's not a perfect space, but where I have had a lot of support historically is women who recognize themselves in me in their earliest stages, whatever that might be, right? And then
Mm.
you're able to have that candid conversation about that's how I'm feeling, what would I do about it? And then normally conversation would unfold. When I used to be in this stage of my life, that's how I navigated it. So I think it takes a village to raise next generation of leaders. And every chance I get, I make sure I pass on that real talk. to other of my female peers to make sure they don't spend time on unnecessary things.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, from a leader at such a young age and being the only woman in the room, in the most influential rooms across the continent, was there a moment that where you consciously stepped into your authority and knew that, okay, now I've made it, I'm here, and this is my voice, and where you were full in your power? Like, how long did that take you to get to that stage where you're like, okay, I got this?
I think couple of years initially, and because again it was baptism by fire on volume in a very intense market. I think that cliche saying, if you're the smartest person in a room, you're in the wrong room. So I've always looked for a smarter room, and I think I'll continue doing that for the rest of my career. But where I think it gets more comfortable as when you build that muscle of looking for your crowd quickly. And
Mm.
then I collect these gems of my business partners who I can trust, who do business in similar way, who have global outlook, right? And global community it's big, but it's not that big, right? So sometimes you end up traveling with each other from company to company or project to project, right? And once you move and you have some experience, and then you build your team around you, and when it's a supportive, positive environment that is focusing on delivering business value, whatever the context is, then it becomes a safe space to lead and drive, and but you create that space for yourself by being very intentional on your creating the right surroundings for it.
Mm. I think this is a really beautiful segue. We talked just a little bit about the women that that are competitive and they don't want you to succeed, and how we need to flip that around. We need to actually pull these women in and go, okay, we're stronger together. It's not a competition.
Right.
But I'd also really love to shine the light on, and I know that you and I have talked about this before, about support hers. And, since it's going to be actually 6 years since we launched Support Her, about raising the profiles of men that are champions for women, because it
Right.
wasn't talked about. Everybody was focused on what women could do, but really, we didn't invite men to the conversation for so long, which was like, oh my God, why do we not invite half the population to the conversation? And the ones in senior leadership roles, those are the ones that have been there. So, as soon as we did start talking about it, I had a lot of senior leaders, come up to me and saying, thank you, because I wouldn't have got here without my support hers that helped champion me throughout my whole career path and journey. So I guess my question to you, Kristine, is who have been some of those support hers, and why is it so important that we welcome them, our male allies, to the conversation?
Yeah, and I've been very fortunate that I have had many over the years and in different countries and different setups, both business and personal. And I've been always in male dominated environments. So a lot of the times I am the only woman in the room. So the people that I do business with, they all men, right? I think we're doing better now in technology. But 10 years ago, it would be a very common space, right? And the couple of examples, one of the big supporters back at the university days when I was battling for the scholarship because it was very, very competitive, right? It was a prestigious scholarship for 1 year, and people were questioning how is she going to go from tourism management to masters in investment and finance, and is that the right allocation of assets for who are we training? And the dean stepped in and said, "No, we'll give her a chance. She's a high profile student." And I graduated with a first class. and it was a big turning point in my career because I probably wouldn't be here talking about the things we're talking about, right? So who is
Mm.
speaking up for you when everybody else is doubting you? Who is your champion at that moment, right? Because it's easier to go with the crowd. And then, yeah, you're gonna say something.
No, I was just going to say I love that story about the dean because how often, like, kudos to the dean for
Yeah.
saying no. She's in this bucket. She wants to drive here. Let her go. Like, I
Yeah.
think it should be welcomed the opportunity where, like, I now know where I want to go just because the career path or the site that I thought I was heading down, it's okay to pivot. It's okay to change your mind. And I think the insights, and the journey, I mean, could you imagine of staying in that same career path?
No, I would have been miserable. I'm so happy doing what I'm doing, and it's so interesting because it changes so quickly. And we all know that generative AI is probably one of the most important technologies of our lifetime, right? So I would have hated to miss out on the front seat on that shift and impact. And in a corporate life till today, it's very important that you have supporters because you can't be in every boardroom every time. And when there's big decisions that involve big resources, and again, back to that career defining moments, right? Who is going to be in your corner saying, no, she's the right leader there because all sorts of things transpire, right?
So are there any really big moments where you thought, okay, let me ask you this one here because I know that this is a tough one for a lot of women as they carve their path to C-suite, and top executive roles and for sure on a global level like you've played. Have there been any times have you okay, let me rephrase this. Have you seen a shift where it's now more open doors for women to have a seat at that table from when you first began? Like, are you noticing a steady increase? Well, there's more opportunities, there's greater buy-in, or are there still some stale bodies in the room?
I think it's a mix of both, depending on who you work with, right? I've always gravitated towards a very progressive, high-paced environments with a top tech, and they're the in my past companies, the focus has been who's the best person for the job, right? Because when you have millions at stake, you want that right person to do it, and if that engineer happens to be a woman, then it's the path is easy, right? But I can appreciate it's not everywhere like that. I also think it's a generational change where with the rise of social media, more female leaders have a way of getting the voice out there and talk more openly about the challenging parts of it, right? And then get the word around faster. The panels, the TED Talks, the book clubs, right? Like where we all share the things that bother us and how to do better. And I think the next generation stands on our shoulders, and then they're already less intimidated to go and ask for that opportunity or speak up in the boardroom, right? And it's not going to be solved maybe in my lifetime, but all we can do is help female leaders around us. A year at the time, opportunity at the time, right? So I think I have been intentional about creating opportunities for my female peers, right? Especially with early talent. If I have a large transformation project that I think is going to be interesting, I'll create that stretch project for somebody. It's a low barrier for entry, it's a controlled environment, and even so, if somebody fails, it's that carving out, right? But what if they succeed? Now you've built another Lego block of that, of that confidence for the people. So I think we create those opportunities for people.
Beautiful. Uh, I want to go back to a little bit more about the support her and about some of the barriers for women and, your in that age group where you're having to think about planning for your
Right.
family, not just your career, but a family. And so, there's this vulnerability about being in a male-dominated industry and around the table where they don't have a clock ticking. We do. We have to plan for it. And so you and I had a really, really great conversation about that, and I don't see it talked about enough. So I would love for you to shine some light into the conversation that we had a few weeks ago. And it was about a very intentional decision for you to plan for your future so that your career could continue to grow. And so let's talk about that choice that you made and what actually you needed to do to surround yourself with your support hers
Yeah.
by making that decision happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's such an important topic, and I've been very vocal in my circles about this and sharing the knowledge. I think fertility preservation is a big topic that the business community needs to do better with and sharing the knowledge, because when you're in the early 20s going around the world building business cases, right? It's just exciting. You're chasing the next big deal, the next big role, the next big everything, right? And now, as long as you speak English, and especially in technology career, right, that can take you anywhere around the world, and time flies. And I wish back in my early 20s there were some female leader or anyone who would have told me, listen, in a rear view mirror, have a look at the topic, right? You make sure you preserve what you want to preserve, and then you have options. Give yourself options, so you're not chasing an ambulance, and at the last minute. And it takes time, and it takes resources. And when you just start out in the field, maybe you're not that financially prepared for it. But I think where it's important is to know your values, know your desires for life outside of professional life, and then start planning, and then get the best doctors, the best clinics, the best everything, right? So, and it was interesting because as I was going through that journey, I was very vocal with my male supporters too, with my business community, because it takes medicine taken, right, and hormones, and it's a roller coaster, right? And if you're I was in the middle of one of the biggest deals I've ever done in my life, and that required trips to different states. And when you're going through this kind of thing medically, it's pretty volatile. And I could not have done that without my male counterparts or support hers, right? Because how do you, when stakes is so high, how do you ensure you don't lose these opportunities as you attend to other parts of your life that are important? And having people who say, no, your spot is your spot. You're there because you deserve a spot for your leadership, for your business acumen, for your delivering results aspect of it. And if you need to be in a hospital 2 days earlier because your body is unpredictable, then we'll replace you, but finish what you started. And that was important. And amount of women who came to me, my close friends, who said, you're so brave to talk about it, and to why it's normal, right? Because if we're going to employ female leaders, it's a factor, and it needs to be accounted for. And I feel like the generation before me was not comfortable talking about it, so they were hiding, they were making excuses why they not going to certain business trips, right? I was showing up to Mount Sinai with golf clubs at 7 a.m. to get my blood work done, and then going for a business round of golf, right? Like, you make space for it, but you also need folks to help you along the way.
So how long does that, I mean, I have never been through that process at all, but I think it's absolutely freaking brilliant. Like how strategic and thoughtful, and to really have that a plan, like that would give me security. If I would have
Yes,
known what I knew back then, maybe I wouldn't have made some of the
certain
choices
life
that I did
choices.
because
Yep.
I wanted to have a child. I wanted to get married. And
Yes.
so talk me through how long that process really takes from beginning to end, because I'm not sure that a lot of listeners really know what steps they would take to make that
Yeah.
happen. Maybe you can share that.
Yeah, I think from the first appointment to the end of it and the whole preservation was about 6 months. So it's not that bad.
Mm,
You just got to make sure you pick the right doctor. And my doctor was worked in New York for many years, and he was a leading doctor, still is, and he knows that motion where he helped other women in Google, Facebook, and professional careers, women like me. And when I connected with him, he said, I know what your schedule looks like and I'll help you make it work, right? Because you have to go for checkups and continuous appointments and all of that. So I think having a business partner and a doctor that understands and in the same wavelength is important, becomes part of your tribe. And then yeah, so it's basically the whole process about 2 to 3 months once you start with the hormones, but 6 months versus 100 years you're gonna live. Everyone could do it and should do it. If you
mhm.
don't, if you're not fortunate enough, or you haven't met that special someone early in your life, then give yourselves the option so it doesn't cloud the judgment.
Beautiful. I just think that is so value added. Like I just like thank you for sharing. And I hope that our listeners are going, yes, I'm going to have that conversation with some women that I know in our circles. It's almost like talking about the perimenopause, the menopause, the HRT now that, we should have been talking about like years ago, right? Like the more information that we have, the better decisions that we can make that are best for us. Because
And
everybody's going to have that decision, whether
yeah.
they want to or not, but at least we can have that. We don't have to rule it out.
Yeah, and be educated about it, right? And have that conversation with the younger talent you're mentoring, because I guarantee you they're not thinking about it. And if you
Mm,
don't have a mother, a sister, or somebody who is older than you and say, okay, this is an important topic, you wouldn't know. I didn't know. So I didn't start thinking about it till my 30s, and then took a couple years. So yeah, I think it's extremely important, especially now that more and more women are looking to contribute in the business world.
absolutely. And I think that's how we can encourage more women to do the
Yeah,
same, right? Because
give them
we're
options.
taking that, that clock off their shoulder.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
huge. So I want to talk a little bit. I mean, this is the Woman of Inspiration podcast, and you know that I am all about celebrating the achievements of women. And you had just a sneak peek, and there's more to the journey, Kristine. But why is it really important, do you believe, being through this process of recognition and putting women into the spotlight? Why is that so important?
I think it's hugely important because it was almost meditative for me to share my journey, because I think for a leader like me who is always focused on the next big thing, right? I have a demanding role, and you go from solving one business challenge to the other, right? But you never take time to look back at the full story and own your story, right? Own the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think once you put it all on paper, or at least talk about it, it just kind of gives you more confidence about, okay, I can do this, right? Whatever you're going through life, maybe you're at this next big jump, and having that recognition and community of supportive women. And by the way, your circle is just fantastic and so intelligent and supportive and just kind, and we all need that, right? That
Mm.
no matter how successful you are. So I think laying down the cards and looking at your whole life story was amazing, very reflective and therapeutical.
And so I want to ask you about, I know that in our nomination packages, there's the letters of reference. And, you know, I think probably one of the most, just the most exciting things is to see those letters of reference come through
Right.
for the leaders. And I always say, create a whole little folder like on your drive. And so when shit's hitting the fan and you're at the bottom of the roller coaster, you go and read all those letters.
That's a wonderful idea. I never thought about it this way.
Right? And keep them.
Yeah.
And because honestly, we do not know the ripple effect that we have created until somebody reminds us of that. So what was that like for you?
It was fantastic. It was first time I experienced something like that, so I was very excited. And I think having other women and support hers at that evening shared the stories, and um, some people were just so warm and giving us hugs and saying, "Wow, wow, like you've done so much." And I think that that kindness is what keeps us going, right? And keeps us getting out of the bed and creating more and be inspired to do more. And then it becomes this positive flywheel where all of this support, kindness, recognition inspires people to do more, and then we inspire others, and then they get inspired and inspire others. And I think it's a wonderful thing that you do. And so thank you for that, Monica.
Well, you are so welcome. You're very deserving. And I'm, like I said in the beginning of the podcast, I was super honored that we are really one of the very first opportunities for you to share your career path and your
Thank
journey. I
you.
mean, you have been navigating in a world of ultra confidence, confidential environments. And so
Yes.
being able to talk about your career path and journey and share being in the boardroom, at 24 years old, surrounded by CEOs, like those are things that other leaders can take and go, wow, she did it, so can I.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So I also want to talk a little bit about, let's talk about women in technology. What do you think is next? Like, the next decade, how exciting is it going to be for women that sort of enter this industry and field? And what do you think's coming down the pipes?
I think it's the most exciting field there is because there's not an industry in this world that is not being changed by technology, right? Everybody wants to do things faster, better, cheaper, um, you name it. So it doesn't matter what industry you're in, being appraised of these big trends and how technology is changing that and how you can leverage it is going to be extremely interesting and important. And we all read about the news, this acceleration and the stuff that Amazon and Google's and Metas and Nvidias of the world allow us to do, and the medicines that being developed faster, right? So it's an exciting space. What I think isn't going to change is that human factor, the
Mm.
human factor of relationships. And I think for somebody who is thinking, well, how is AI going to change my job? How is generative AI affect my job? My advice would be to stick with jobs that require a lot of human contact, right? That cannot be replaced. And women are naturally better at that, right? We're more in tune with our own emotions with other people's emotions, right? If you think about what it takes to raise a baby, that thing doesn't even communicate, right? So the screams, the body language, the things that women are capable of reading in a room, I personally think that's a superpower, right? So I think that's a really exciting space for anyone to enter, but for women especially. So um, definitely, I would encourage the younger generation to get involved and plan for these bigger trends, right? How do I
Mhm.
stay on top of it, but in a way that's going to ensure my career for decades to come. And um, from personal experience, the technology changes rapidly. What doesn't change is that human values, you building rapport with somebody and helping them through some kind of business challenge or personal challenge, right? Because you inevitably
Mhm.
become close with the people you do business with, right? So if you're
Yes.
able to maintain those relationships, I think that's important no matter what's happening in the global arena. There will always be enough problems to solve business wise, right? We see all these big leaders talking about how that's going to unleash more creativity, right? And as AI automates the non-differentiated tasks, you're just gonna get a chance to do more stuff, and more exciting stuff, right? So
Mm.
definitely encouraged by the industry.
Well, I love how you're talking about the relationship piece because I have to say that even in my own world, the inner circle, as I call them, are typically the people that I have done business with.
Yeah,
Because they, and no, I mean, I have my friends, different levels of friends that have been like 3 decades, 4 decades, in my world. But it's the people that I do business with and the people in the network. And I have to even say, like, our women of inspiration, like, they're kind of moving at the same speed that I move at, right?
right.
Which is go. And
There's
so
only one speed to you, Monica. We know that in a
there's
good
only one
way.
speed. And, I find that the relationships of people to understand that, family doesn't really understand that a lot. Like it's the business community, it's the relationships that you build and grow in that inner circle. They're pure gold.
And
So
your circle is tremendous. I mean, amount of people who were received the awards, right? The scientists, the sports leaders, the business leaders, the art leaders. It's pretty good network.
yeah. And this is just the beginning as we do the
It's the
world's
begin.
largest women's summit and lots of other stuff that we're going to talk about. Okay, so I've got a couple more questions. So yes, we've talked about women in tech, but what's next for Kristine? What's your 5 year, maybe not your 5 year, what's something big that you'd love to achieve in your career?
I think at this stage of my life, it's all about giving back. I have had an interesting career thus far, and it's going to continue being interesting just because I've picked a very cool space that will continue evolving. And how do you help next generation of women to see that broader world, right? Everywhere I go, and as I move around the larger and larger projects is how do you bring up that next generation with us? I think that's a massive thing, and on a personal level, I'll just continue working on my writing skills. We talked about it briefly. I'm an avid equestrian, so that's my happy place, and I ride around the world, and yeah, excited to work on that. It's a meditative space that has a lot of parallels between the business and the equestrian world, and yeah.
So talk to me about that. Like, do you rent horses or do you take your horse on a field trip and they just travel with you? Like, I
I rent
don't know.
I
So
rent
share that.
I rent everywhere I go, and because I've historically traveled so much, I've worked out a cadence where I build in some of that personal time to see the country where I'm going, because otherwise it would be all work, right? So, and with a bit of research, there's quite a many places that you can ride in. So I would be riding with Manhattan Riding Club in New York, and if I'm in London, I'll go out of London to ride, and that also helps with the international community because it kind of turns out there's interesting people everywhere that do that. So allowing yourself, there's a sequence how I prepare for large events. If I have to deliver a big executive brief or a big strategy session, I always would be going riding in the morning, and then I'll take my spa session with massage and then an early night sleep. And then next morning, I feel like $1,000,000 and ready to deliver. But you get that adrenaline out, then you relax and you sleep off. So it works.
Wow. I love that. So, okay, first it's a morning ride, which is awesome. Then
Yeah.
it's a massage spa, then an
Yeah.
early bedtime, and then you're like hitting the ground running. That is beautiful.
And then I'm Monica mode. All go.
Well, I look forward to doing an introduction to some young leaders actually in New York who've started a world riding club. So please don't let me forget about that because they actually are what is it called? The riding club. and sorry for the listeners here. It just came into my head. So I will share that information later, but these young women
Love
are
that.
doing experiences riding all over the world. So it kind of sounds like it's a really good fit for you to get in touch with them. So
I'd love that.
awesome. Okay, so before we wrap up, and I know there's just a couple more questions that I have, and I would love, since this is the Woman of Inspiration podcast, I would love to know what your definition of a woman of inspiration is.
Yeah, it's a wonderful one. I think for me, woman of inspiration is somebody who knows her values and is able to translate her values openly in a transparent and authentic way, and just share what's important, know your boundaries, and then have people interpret it the way they will. But I think having to be in tune with yourself and be able to translate that in a positive manner in the areas of life that make an impact on other people's lives, may that be in business, may that be in personal life or everywhere you go, right? That integrity, those values, there's this core set of those that they don't change no matter what the setup is. I think that those are the women who've been mostly inspirational to me, and be kind enough to share, you know. We all go through stuff. We all have our own challenges, but being able to help a sister out, that's important to me.
Great, beautiful. And I think we had shared that the original, out of the gate when I started building the network, it was basically, I'm not going to say you have to not be an entrepreneur or a corporate, or I wasn't putting women into buckets. It was all about a shared value system, the courage, the confidence, the commitment to the
Right.
integrity. I figured if our leaders had those values, you would be a good fit. But I also knew that that shared value would be somebody that we'd want to have as a partner, as a sponsor of anybody that we would do business with, that alignment with values would be super important as well. So
Yeah.
I could
Brilliant.
not agree more on your commitment to values and how that is really shaping the decisions that you make.
Thank you.
Beautiful. So this is the fun part because I've got some rapid fire questions for you.
Let's do it.
Okay, so just a couple. So I would love to know what book you're reading right now.
Oh, I'm just finishing the chip wars. I don't know if it's anyone's cup of tea, but I think it's important to understand those larger trends and why what is that we seen in Gen AI in the world is happening, and why it's happening. I think that's extremely interesting. It goes into politics and hi history of all of that. And what I was finding out about my own country is that Latvia used to be a Silicon Valley of Soviet Union. So connecting those dots is pretty interesting. But yeah, whoever's interested in technology and AI, highly recommend that book.
Okay, and the name of the book is
Chip Wars.
Chip Wars.
Mhm.
Okay, beautiful. Okay, a non-negotiable, a daily non-negotiable that, I mean, you lead a fast-paced life. What is a daily non-negotiable for you?
Daily non-negotiable is the sleep. I'm very sad about how I sleep and how long I sleep because um, that helps us recover, right? And reduce the stress levels. And I'm a big proponent of monitoring stress levels because when people are stressed, it narrows the aperture, and then you're not making the best decisions. And in my position, a lot of the times the decision are not just about me; it's about my team, my customer, and others. So I feel like I owe it to my body and the rest of the world to come to the morning tasks till evening well rested.
What time do you normally wake up in the morning?
About 6:37,
Yeah, okay. So you're in bed by 10,
somewhat.
unless we're out celebrating.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, and okay, so if you could interview anybody, um, who would you have an interview or go to lunch with?
Oh my God. I think I'd go with Michelle Obama.
Oh, Michelle.
Amazing. Yeah. Hi, Michelle. I'd love to. I would love to have a private chat with her, and I just love everything she's doing. And it seems like she's in her era after
Mm.
Barack no longer is the president, right? She just blossoms every year and steps into her power, and you see much more of her than him. And she's been just a woman with great values that resonate with me and the lives she's touching. So yeah, that'd be my choice.
Beautiful. Okay, Michelle, if you're listening, we have another lunch date. And I know that we talked a little bit about spirituality, you and I, a little bit, but
Right.
how do you play? I mean, intention is a really big thing. So, do you, when you think about the next and the next, like, do you make your decisions? Are they, how does, how does that spiritual realm sort of play into some of your bigger decisions, whether it's personal and professional?
Yeah, I think I'm quite a bit into meditation, so I think having that quiet space to listen to yourself and be true to your values is important. How that magic happens, I don't quite know, but you always know what feels good and what doesn't feel good, right? When we take some decisions, sometimes I always joke that I always get what I want is not always what I need at the end, right? So being honest about the goals that you're setting and why it matters in this season of your life is important. And then there is this either feel good or not feel good energy around the decisions, right? And
Mm.
sometimes when you know you work through coming back through business world, right? You have all sorts of situations and people behave in all sorts of ways, but we all know before we make that decision deep inside, you know whether you're doing a good or a bad thing, right? You can't lie to yourself. And so I think having given myself that space to get in tune with myself, what is it that I want in the middle of what everybody else has a claim on my time and my journey is important. And then once you get that message from within from yourself, then you have to be brave enough to execute on it. So I think that's another big part of it.
Brilliant. So I am just going to say I could talk all day long with you, Kristine. I look forward to the next opportunity. I know we have some things that we're going to talk about behind the scenes.
Been a
But thank you.
pleasure.
Any last words for our listeners? And I bet they're going, "Phew, this is mind blowing." I bet they were writing notes the whole time. But any last words that you'd like to share with our listeners today?
Yeah, I think my biggest thing is just never betray yourself and just have the courage to take the next step that you know deep inside in your heart you want to take. Whether that's an important conversation in the business world or that crazy horse trip you wanted to take. Don't wait to live. The world changes so quickly, and just have the courage to live your best life and don't forget to build a community and give back to others who you never know who's going through what. So sometimes being vulnerable and checking in on people who you see are, maybe not in an optimal space. We all are responsible for creating this positive and constructive environment around us. So yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, and how can anybody get a hold of you? So you are hard to find on the internet. So how could they get a hold of you?
There's always a LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. Reach out if you want to chat or if there's anything I can ever do, career advice or anything like that. I'm happy to lend a hand and have a discussion.
Great. Okay, so LinkedIn it is, and maybe you can mention that you heard the podcast, and then they'll know exactly the conversation that we had. So,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Kristine. It has been an absolute treat to have you on the Woman of Inspiration podcast. Congratulations again on your
Thank you.
well-deserved Woman of Inspiration Award in Woman in Tech, and I'm excited to have you on this journey with us. So, listeners, if you enjoyed this podcast, click the subscribe button and share this with everyone. Share it widely and drop Kristine a note and let her know what you thought. Anyways, have
Thank
a
you.
great day and we'll see you real soon, Kristine.
Thank you for your leadership. Thank you, Monica. Appreciate it.
It was my pleasure.
Take care.
Thanks.